All right, so check it out. Last time we created the first model file representing a student in the database. So now we've got to check, see whether we can really insert a record into the database by writing some code in our test directory. So basically, I want to be sure that everything's going well according to what we want it to do. First, we got to learn a little bit more about Mocha's working style, right? Because we're going to start from scratch. So I'm going to create a new file inside the test directory, name it create_test.js. So you see what I'm doing here? Just put the underscore in test when we're naming our files and when we're testing the create functionality. So our main aim here is to write some tests, and then we'll be sure that we're able to create a new student and save it to the database. So let me show you that this diagram here. This shows the structure that we're going to use for all the tests when we're writing our code in Mocha. In every test file, at the top, we have a describe block, or we can call it the described function. And then inside the function, there will be it blocks. So we can call that it function. Inside the it function, it's going to put some code to test a particular part of the code inside of our student model. Now, they're both provided by Mocha, and by that I mean describe and it function. So now we can start using them, and they're just going to do everything automatically. So we'll write our first test and see what happens next. So we'll go back to our test file, and here we'll write our top-level describe function, as you can see in the diagram. Now, the describe function contains two arguments. First, a string describing the test that we're going to write, and a function as a second. So I'll start by writing the string as create the first data, and as a function, I'll put an arrow function. Cool, so we can use this string in order to modify the testing feedback that we get from Mocha. Now, it doesn't have a particular function. Its main purpose is, well, to get us to figure out what tests are breaking and understand what to do from there. Personally, I think that it's kind of better to name them with reasonable names, and that way we'll understand what our test is about. Some people like to give them named names, but like I said, I like to keep it clear and simple. So inside the function we pass, we write different it blocks. And just like the describe block, the it block also has a string as a first argument and a function as a second. So we can write save the student for the first argument and pass it in an arrow function. Now, the most important key of all testing in Mocha is the it block. Mocha understands that the user is trying to run a test inside of this function. So it'll queue up all the different it functions in the entire test suite, and then we'll run them all at once. Okay, so we make an assertion, which is a piece of code saying that I hope this value is equal to that value inside of every function that we make. You get it? Yeah, so the actual idea behind the assertion is to check to see if the code is running appropriately. So there's no tooling inside of here in Mocha by default, and this enables us to make this assertion. So what I mean by that is we automatically get access to describe and the it function, but the situation is not going to be the same when we're making an assertion in the it function. So that means that we need to import an assertion library at the very beginning of the file in order to make an assertion. All right, so we will write at the top const assert equals require assert. So now the assertion on the left is for making an assertion within the block. That makes sense. So assertion will compare two values. It will be a Boolean. And if the things go well according to the expectation, then our test passes. So here I'll write assert, and inside the assert, 2 plus 3 equals 5. All right, so the statement here will be evaluated, and of course I expect that my test will pass. All right, so now in order to make this little test run, you got to use the command line. Now, I use this here, but if you don't want to, just go ahead and open a command prompt and write npm run test. Now, as you can see, we get an error message here. So by using npm run test, we run the entire test suite inside the project. And why is that? Because we haven't done the setup of the command npm yet. So in order to execute this test suite, we put a little piece of code inside the project. Now remember the file package.json at the very beginning of the project? So we'll open it up and let's have a look at the script section inside the file. All right, so here it says when it's run, it prints out error, no test specified, and exits process. So this is where that error message that we got a minute ago came from. And you can see the error message here as well. So we'll erase the whole thing here from echo to exit 1. And we will put in our testing command here, Mocha. Now keep in mind that we have to put it inside of double quotes. So now let's go back in here, write npm run test on the command line, run the test. And what do you think? We see, I hope you see too, the describe string saying create the first data. Now we can still see the string that we saw before. Our mongoose library was connecting to Mongo. So we are connected, yes? And also the save the student statement that we put in, and it's passing in because the assertion is true. So now let's make it fail. So let's just turn this equation here false. And let's come back in here, run the test again. And just like that, you see that we get a red error message here, and we know exactly why, because this assert is not true. Now, besides that, it's really important to have the proper string statement because, for example, let's say that if we've got hundreds of tests going in only one project, we've got to know what's passed, what's failed. So here we can see that save the student is what has failed. So now I believe that you've learned how to make an assertion and to execute a test inside Mocha. Do you believe that too? I'll bet you do. Let's take a break here and continue in the next section.